Jake Morrison stood at the viewing port of Haven's Rest Station, staring at the piece of junk floating in the darkness. The ship looked like it had been through a war and lost badly. Its hull was covered in scratches and dents. Several panels were missing entirely. One of the engine pods hung at an odd angle, barely attached to the main body. "That's what you dragged all the way out here?" Amy Chen appeared beside him, coffee cup in hand. She was his chief engineer and the smartest person he knew. She was also brutally honest, which he usually appreciated. Today, not so much. "It has potential," Jake said. Amy snorted. "It has rust. Lots and lots of rust." The ship was called the HMS Defiant, built back when Earth was just starting to push into deep space. That was 80 years ago. In ship terms, that made it ancient. Jake had found it drifting in a dead zone between human and Krell space. No power, no crew, just floating like a ghost. "The fuel tanks are intact," Jake pointed out. "Look at the size of those things." "Big tanks don't mean much if everything else is garbage," Amy replied, but she was squinting now, studying the vessel more carefully. That was a good sign. When Amy squinted, it meant she was thinking. Ben Taylor walked up behind them, his boots heavy on the metal floor. Their pilot was a big man, with gray in his hair, and scars on his hands from his military days. "The inspectors are here," he said. "They want to see you." Ever, Jake sighed. The Galactic Coalition had rules about salvage, especially salvage from contested zones. He had to prove the Defiant was worth claiming, or they would scrap it for parts. The inspection room was cold and sterile. 3 aliens sat behind a long table. One was a Krell, which surprised Jake. The Krell were insect-like creatures, tall and thin with 4 arms and eyes that glowed faintly yellow. This one wore the blue sash of an ambassador. "Captain Morrison." The Krell clicked his mandibles together, in what might have been amusement. "We have reviewed your claim on the vessel designated HMS Defiant. And?" Jake tried to keep his voice steady. "It is worthless," the Krell said flatly. "The fusion drive is 3 generations old. The hull plating is corroded beyond safe operation. The navigation systems are primitive. We calculate the cost of repair would exceed the value of the ship by a factor of 12. One of the other inspectors, a squat Taurian with purple skin, nodded. "I agree with Ambassador Zix Thar. This vessel should be scrapped. The materials have some value, but the ship itself has none." Jake felt his jaw tighten. "The fuel system is unique. The tanks were designed for long-range hydrogen drives. That technology might be old, but it's reliable." Zix Thar made a sound like laughter. "Humanity clings to its outdated methods, while the galaxy moves forward." The Krell leaned forward. "Tell me, Captain, why would anyone want a ship that moves slower than modern vessels, has weaker shields, and carries fuel that takes up half the cargo space?" "Because it works," Jake said simply. "Working and being useful are not the same thing," Zix Thar replied. "I recommend denial of your salvage claim." The next hour was brutal. Jake argued, pleaded, and finally called in favors from Commander Victor Lane, a human military liaison who owed him from a previous job. Victor was a stern man who rarely smiled, but he respected Jake's instincts. "The Defiant has historical value if nothing else," Victor told the committee. "It represents an important era in human expansion. Museums are for historical value," Zix Thar said, "not operational space." In the end, Jake got his ship by a narrow vote. The Taurian inspector abstained. And the third inspector, a crystalline being who had been silent the whole time, voted in his favor. Zix Thar's mandibles clacked with obvious displeasure as he left the room. "You just made an enemy," Victor warned Jake afterward. "I make enemies easy," Jake said. Over the next 3 weeks, Jake's crew worked on the Defiant in Haven's Rest's repair bay. Amy dove into the systems with enthusiasm once she got her hands on the actual machinery. "This is built like a fortress," she said one day, covered in grease up to her elbows. Everything is over-engineered. Triple redundancies on life support. Hull plating twice as thick as it needs to be. Heavy, Ben noted. Slow, but tough, Amy countered. Ships these days are fast because they're light. Light because they're thin. This thing could probably survive a collision that would tear a modern cruiser in half. Lisa Hayes, their communications officer, found something interesting in the ship's logs. She was a quiet woman with a gift for languages and patterns. The Defiant was supposed to be the first of a new class, she explained, showing them data on her tablet. They built the prototype, but the program got cancelled. Too expensive, too slow, and the hydrogen drive system never worked as well as fusion. So it really is obsolete, Ben said. No, Lisa smiled. It means nobody ever pushed it to its full potential. They gave up too soon. Jake patted the bulkhead affectionately. The metal was cold under his palm. Nobody gives up on you now, old girl. We'll find what you're good for. Outside the repair bay, Ambassador Zixthar watched through a viewport with several other Krell officers. The humans waste resources on junk, one officer said. Let them. Zixthar replied. When our plans move forward, their attachment to primitive technology will be their downfall. This ship, like all human vessels, will be useless against what is coming. The Krell turned away, mandibles clicking with satisfaction. Back on the Defiant, Jake stood in the massive fuel tank chamber. The tank stretched 3 decks high, taking up a third of the ship's interior. Amy was right. They were enormous. Pipes and valves covered every surface, all designed to handle hydrogen fuel at extreme pressures. What are you thinking? Amy asked. Finding him there. I'm thinking these tanks weren't just for propulsion, Jake said slowly. Look at all this infrastructure. The cooling systems, the pressure regulators, the magnetic containment fields. This is more than a fuel system. It's whatever we make it, Amy agreed. Question is, what do we need it to be? Jake didn't have an answer yet. But standing there, in that cavernous space, he felt certain they would find one. The Defiant had survived 80 years of neglect. It had been called worthless, obsolete, and junk, but it was still here, still intact, still waiting, and Jake had learned long ago that the things everyone else threw away often turned out to be exactly what you needed when everything else failed. The ship hummed around them as systems came back online one by one. In 3 days, they would be ready for a test flight. The Defiant was about to fly again, whether the galaxy thought it was worthless or not. The alarm woke Jake from a dead sleep. He rolled out of his bunk on the Defiant and hit the comm panel before his eyes were fully open. What is it? Colony distress signals. Lisa's voice was tight with worry. 3 of them. New Terra, Providence, and Harmony Station. Jake was running before she finished talking. The bridge was already crowded when he arrived. Ben sat at the pilot station. Amy was at engineering. And Lisa worked the communications console frantically. Commander Victor Lane stood in the center, his face grim. What happened? Jake demanded. Victor pulled up a star map. 3 red dots blinked urgently. The Krell attacked 2 hours ago. They used some kind of new weapon. Every ship in the sector just stopped working. Power systems failed across the board. All of them? Amy looked up from her console. Every single one. Victor confirmed. Military vessels, civilian transports, even the space stations. If it has a fusion reactor, it's dead in the water. Jake felt his stomach drop. How many people? 7 million across the 3 colonies, Lisa said quietly. Life support is running on backup batteries. They have maybe 48 hours before it fails completely. The comm screen flickered to life. Ambassador Zixthar appeared. His mandibles spread in what Jake now recognized as a smile. Attention. Human forces. The Krell Empire has demonstrated the futility of resistance. Your modern vessels are now scrap metal. Your colonies are helpless. Surrender them to Krell control within 2 standard days, or watch your people suffocate in the dark. The screen went black. Smug bug, Ben muttered. Victor slammed his fist on the console. We have ships coming from Earth, but they're weeks away. Everything closer is paralyzed. The weapon spreads through subspace somehow. Every time we bring a new ship into range, it dies too. Jake's mind was racing. How does it work? We don't know exactly, Victor admitted. But it targets fusion reactors specifically. Disrupts the magnetic containment fields. Once it hits a ship, the reactor shuts down and won't restart. Amy stood up suddenly. The Defiant. Everyone looked at her. The Defiant doesn't have a fusion reactor, she explained, excitement building in her voice. It runs on hydrogen combustion. Old tech. Really old tech. This weapon might not even recognize it as a power source. Jake felt hope surge through him. Can we get to the colonies? The Defiant is slow, Ben said. It would take us 30 hours to reach New Terra. We don't have anything faster that works, Victor pointed out. He looked at Jake hard. Can that rust bucket actually make the trip? Only one way to find out, Jake said. 2 hours later, they stood in the Defiant's cavernous fuel tank chamber again. Amy had called in Dr. Marcus Stone, the original designer of the ship's systems. He was an old man now, bent with age but sharp as ever. He ran his hand over the pipes lovingly. I always knew this design had potential, he said. Nobody would listen. Tell us what it can do, Jake urged. Dr. Stone smiled. The hydrogen system was meant to be more than propulsion. See these secondary chambers? They were designed to superheat the hydrogen and channel it through magnetic coils. I originally proposed it as a weapon system, but the military said it was too risky. What kind of weapon? Asked Kate Sullivan. She was a weapons specialist who had volunteered to join them when word of the mission got out. She was short, stocky, and could strip a plasma rifle blindfolded. An electromagnetic pulse bomb, Doctor, Stone explained. If we overload the containment fields, while the hydrogen is at critical temperature, it creates a massive electromagnetic discharge. Would fry every electronic system within kilometers, including ours. Amy noted. Including ours, Dr. Stone agreed. Which is why it was never built. Too dangerous. Jake was starting to see it. But if the Krell weapon already shuts down fusion reactors, and we can create an EMP that shuts down everything else, we level the playing field, Victor finished. The Krell ships would be as dead as ours. It's suicide, Ben said flatly. Even if we survive the EMP, we'd be floating dead in space right next to a very angry Krell fleet. Better than 7 million people dying, Kate said. They spent the next 6 hours planning. The Defiant could make it to the colonies, but they would need to get past the Krell blockade. That meant going through an asteroid field the Krell considered impassable. Modern ships were too fast and too fragile to navigate it safely. But the Defiant was slow and tough. It's actually perfect for this, Ben admitted, plotting the course. Manual controls, slow speed, heavy armor. We can thread through there if we're careful. Victor was on the comm with Earth Command. Jake could hear the argument even from across the bridge. Finally, Victor turned to him. They say no. Too risky. They want us to wait for the fleet. The fleet will be too late, Jake said. I know. Victor's jaw was set. That's what I told them. They still say no. Jake looked at his crew. Amy nodded. Ben cracked his knuckles. Lisa was already powering up the communications array. Kate was checking her weapons, even though they wouldn't help much against a fleet. Commander, Jake said carefully. You should probably get off the ship now. What we're about to do is unauthorized. Victor stared at him for a long moment. Then he smiled. Just a little. My hearing must be going. I didn't hear you say that. He moved to the navigation console. I'm coming with you. Someone needs to coordinate with the colonies. You'll lose your commission, Jake warned. I'll lose it anyway if 7 million people die on my watch, Victor replied. At least this way, I can look myself in the mirror. The Defiant's engines rumbled to life. The sound was different from modern ships, deeper and rougher. The whole vessel vibrated as power flowed through systems that hadn't been used in decades. Undocking in 30 seconds, Ben announced. Jake sat in the captain's chair. It was worn and patched, but it felt right. Take us out. The Defiant pulled away from Haven's Rest slowly. Through the viewport, Jake could see other ships floating dead in space, their lights dark. The Krell weapon had reached even here, but the Defiant moved steadily forward, its primitive systems unaffected. Getting hails from Station Command, Lisa reported. They're ordering us to return. Tell them our communications are malfunctioning, Jake said. Already did. Lisa smiled slightly. They were committed now. The Defiant accelerated toward the asteroid field, moving at a pace that would have embarrassed a modern freighter. But it moved, and right now, that made it the most valuable ship in human space. Picking up Krell patrol signatures ahead, Lisa warned. 2 scout ships. They'll see us on sensors, Victor said. Maybe not, Amy suggested. Our energy signature is so low and weird. They might think we're a piece of junk drifting through. They held their breath as the Defiant passed within 50 kilometers of the Krell scouts. The enemy ships didn't react. Amy was right. To modern sensors, the Defiant looked like debris. We're ghosts, Kate said with satisfaction. Ghosts with a purpose, Jake replied. Let's go save some lives. The Defiant pushed forward into the darkness, carrying humanity's last desperate hope in its ancient hull. The asteroid field looked like a wall of death. Rocks the size of buildings tumbled through space in chaotic patterns. Some moved fast, others slow, and they crashed into each other with forces that would crush any normal ship. This is insane, Ben said, but his hands were already on the manual controls. Modern ships flew themselves through autopilot. The Defiant had joysticks and physical throttles, like something from a museum. Slow and steady, Jake reminded him. We have time. The colonies don't, Lisa said quietly. She had her station filled with distress signals. The messages were getting desperate. Life support failing. Temperatures dropping. Children crying in the background of some transmissions. Dr. Stone sat at an auxiliary console, working with Amy on the fuel tank modifications. We need to rebuild the magnetic coils, he explained, his old hands moving surely over the controls. Then, superheat the hydrogen to critical levels. When we trigger it, the electromagnetic pulse will radiate outward in all directions. How big? Kate asked. Big enough to hit every ship in a standard blockade formation, Dr. Stone said. Maybe 10 kilometers radius. And us? Victor wanted to know. The command bunker has the original military-grade shielding, Amy said. It's over-engineered. Like everything else on this ship. If we can get everyone in there before detonation, we might survive. Might, Ben repeated. Better odds than the colonists have, Jake pointed out. The Defiant shuddered as Ben navigated between 2 spinning asteroids. The clearance was measured in meters. A modern ship would have scraped paint off, at minimum. The Defiant's thick hull just absorbed the glancing blow from a smaller rock with barely a dent. See? Amy grinned. Tough old girl. They were 12 hours into the journey when the Krell finally noticed them. Lisa's console lit up with warning signals. 2 patrol ships, changing course to intercept. Make that 3. They figured out we're not debris, Victor said. Weapons charging, Kate reported, though they all knew the Defiant's guns were worthless against modern Krell ships. The first Krell vessel appeared on their screens, sleek and fast. It closed the distance quickly, pulling alongside them. Jake could see its weapon ports opening. Then the Krell ship fired, not at them, but at an asteroid in their path. The rock exploded into fragments that peppered the Defiant's hull. Warning lights flashed across Amy's console. Minor damage to outer plating, she reported. Nothing serious. The Krell ship pulled ahead, then turned broadside, blocking their path. The message was clear. Stop. Or be destroyed. They're hailing us, Lisa said. Jake nodded. Put them through. A Krell officer appeared on screen, mandibles clicking rapidly. Human vessel, you are ordered to halt and submit to boarding. Your presence in this sector is prohibited. We're on a rescue mission, Jake said. Humanitarian aid to the colonies. The colonies are now Krell territory, the officer replied. There is no rescue. There is only surrender. Unquote. We're going through, Jake said flatly. The Krell officer's eyes flashed brighter. You are one old, slow vessel. We are 3 modern warships. You will be destroyed. Maybe, Jake agreed. But you'll have to catch us first. Ben, take us into the thick stuff. Ben grinned and pushed the throttle forward. The Defiant dove toward a dense cluster of asteroids, moving with all the grace of a falling brick. The Krell ships followed, confident in their superior speed and agility. That confidence lasted about 30 seconds. The first Krell ship tried to match the Defiant's course through a narrow gap. Its sleek hull was designed for speed, not punishment. When it clipped an asteroid, the lightweight armor crumpled. The ship spun out of control, smashing into another rock and breaking apart. The second ship learned from that mistake and tried to go around, attempting to cut them off on the other side of the cluster. But Ben knew every trick from his military days. He used the Defiant's bulk to his advantage, riding the gravity of larger asteroids and letting smaller ones bounce off their heavy hull. They're faster, but we're meaner, Ben said, threading them through a gap that looked too small. Metal screamed against rock, but the Defiant pushed through. The third Krell ship was smarter. It stayed back, taking shots whenever it had a clear angle. Energy blasts splashed against the Defiant's shields and hull. More warning lights flashed. Shields at 40%, Amy called out. But armor is holding. How long until we're through? Jake asked. 20 minutes at this pace, Ben replied, sweat on his forehead as he wrestled with the controls. 20 minutes of being shot at. Jake made a decision. Amy, can we vent some fuel? She understood immediately. Oh, you're nasty. I like it. The Defiant released a cloud of hydrogen gas behind them. It spread through the asteroids, invisible, but highly flammable. When the Krell ship fired its next shot, the energy beam ignited the gas. The explosion wasn't huge, but it was enough to throw the Krell vessel off course. It tumbled into an asteroid and went silent. That was creative, Victor said with approval. They emerged from the asteroid field battered but intact. Ahead, the colonies were visible as small lights against the darkness. And between them and safety was the Krell blockade. 30 ships. Maybe more. They formed a perfect sphere around the 3 colonies. Weapons pointed inward, in a clear threat. Surrender or die. We can't fight that, Kate said, stating the obvious. We don't have to, Jake replied. We just have to get close enough. He activated the ship-wide comm. All hands. This is the captain. In approximately 16 hours, we're going to do something incredibly stupid. Doctor, Stone and Amy will finish the modifications to the fuel tanks. Once we're in position, we'll trigger an electromagnetic pulse that should disable the Krell fleet. 1. He paused. It will also disable us. The plan is for everyone to evacuate in the escape pods before detonation. The pods are old, but they're shielded, and they work. You'll drift until coalition forces can pick you up. Another pause. I'm staying with the ship. Someone needs to guide her in manually. Right up to the last second. I won't order anyone to stay with me. But if you want to volunteer, see me on the bridge. He clicked off the comm and sat back. Lisa was crying quietly at her station, still monitoring the colony distress calls. Ben stared at his controls. Amy had stopped working and was looking at the floor. Kate checked her weapons again. Though there was nothing to shoot, Victor broke the silence. "I'm staying." "This isn't your ship," Jake said. "No. But it's my responsibility," Victor replied. "I'm the ranking military officer. If anyone should go down with this operation, it's me." "I'm staying too," Ben announced. "Someone needs to pilot this thing, and you're a terrible driver, Captain." Jake felt his throat tighten. "Ben, don't argue with me." Ben cut him off. "I've been flying for 30 years. If this is my last flight, I'm making it count." Bring Gunt. Bring Gunt. They worked through the next 16 hours in focused silence. Amy and Dr. Stone finished the modifications. The fuel tanks now looked like a bomb, because that's exactly what they were. Pipes glowed red with heat. Magnetic coils hummed with barely contained power. One wrong move, and the whole ship would explode prematurely. Lisa made contact with the colonies, giving them hope. "Help is coming," she told them, her voice steady despite her tears. "Hold on. Just a little longer." Kate checked every escape pod personally, making sure they would launch when needed. She armed herself with 3 different weapons, even though they were useless. It made her feel better. Victor coordinated with what remained of Coalition Command. They were sending every ship they could, but the closest ones were still days away. The Defiant was the only chance. "Approaching the blockade," Ben announced. "They're hailing us." "Ignore it," Jake ordered. The Krell fleet noticed them now. Several ships broke formation, moving to intercept. But they were cautious, confused by this strange old vessel that had somehow survived their weapon and their patrol ships. "Range in 10 minutes, Amy said. "Fuel tanks ready to cascade on your command." Jake stood and faced his crew. "Everyone to the escape pods." "That's an order." Lisa hesitated, then left her station. Kate followed. Amy stayed put. "Amy," Jake said firmly. "I need to monitor the cascade," she replied. "If anything goes wrong, the whole thing could fail. I stay until the last possible second." Jake wanted to argue but knew she was right. He nodded. Dr. Stone patted Amy's shoulder as he passed. "You did good work, young lady. This old ship is proud to serve one more time." The escape pods launched one by one, small specks of light against the darkness. On the bridge, 4 people remained: Jake, Ben, Amy, and Victor. The Defiant pushed forward, slow and steady, heading straight into the heart of the Krell blockade. Ahead, 30 warships waited, their weapons armed and ready. "All or nothing now," Ben said quietly. "All or nothing." Jake agreed. The Krell fleet finally opened fire. Energy beams lanced through space, hammering into the Defiant's shields. The old ship shook with each impact, but it kept moving forward. Ben's hands were steady on the controls, guiding them through the incoming fire, like he was threading a needle. "Shields at 15%, Amy called out, her eyes glued to the fuel tank readings. "But the tanks are stable. Temperature rising according to plan. 5 minutes to optimal range," Victor added, monitoring the tactical display. The Krell ships were forming a tighter formation, concentrating their fire. They knew something was wrong now, even if they didn't know what. Jake watched the main screen. The colonies were visible beyond the blockade, their lights flickering as life support struggled. 7 million people waiting to see if 4 humans in an ancient ship could save them. "Captain, the lead Krell vessel is hailing again," Victor said. "It's Ambassador Zixthar. Put him through." The ambassador's face filled the screen, his mandibles spread wide in fury. "What are you doing, Morrison? You cannot possibly believe you can fight my fleet." "Not fighting," Jake said calmly, delivering a message. "Your ship is seconds from destruction. Surrender now, and I will allow your crew to live." "Funny thing about old ships," Jake replied. Everyone thinks they're useless right up until they prove otherwise. See you soon, Ambassador. He cut the transmission. Zixthar's furious clicking echoed for a moment before the screen went dark. That probably made him angrier, Ben noted. Good, Jake said. Angry people make mistakes. Another barrage hit them. This time something exploded in the lower decks. Alarms blared. Amy's fingers flew over her console, rerouting power. Lost the port stabilizer. Shields down to 8%. We're not going to make it to optimal range at this rate. Yes, we will, Ben said through gritted teeth. He pushed the engines harder, coaxing more speed from the old girl. The Defiant groaned but responded, picking up velocity. 3 minutes. Victor counted down. The command bunker was at the ship's center, surrounded by layers of armor and shielding. It was designed to protect the crew during the worst combat scenarios. When Dr. Stone designed the Defiant, he believed in giving people a chance to survive, now that over-engineering might save their lives. Amy, you need to get to the bunker, Jake ordered. Not yet. She was making final adjustments to the fuel tank cascade. The timing has to be perfect. If we trigger too early, the pulse won't reach the outer ships. Too late, and we might not have enough power. 2 minutes, Victor said. He looked at Jake. We should all get to the bunker. I can trigger the cascade remotely from there. Someone needs to keep flying, Ben said. The Krell Point defense is tracking us. If we go to autopilot now, they'll blow us apart before we get close enough. Another hit. This one was worse. The entire ship lurched sideways. Sparks showered from overhead panels. Ben fought the controls, bringing them back on course. Lost engines 2 and 4, Amy reported. We're down to 60% thrust. Shields are gone completely. 1 minute 30 seconds, Victor said. The Krell fleet was fully focused on them now. Every ship was firing. The Defiant was being torn apart, piece by piece. But it kept going, kept pushing forward into the storm of energy beams. Hull breaches on decks 3, 5, and 7. Amy's voice was steady despite the chaos. Emergency bulkheads holding, fuel tanks still intact. 1 minute, Victor said. Jake made his decision. Everyone to the bunker. Now. That's a direct order. But Ben started. Now, Ben. I'll fly her the rest of the way. Victor grabbed Ben's shoulder. Come on. The captain's made his call. Right being man. With a vote. Ben stood slowly, his face twisted with emotion. He looked at Jake for a long moment. Then he threw a sloppy salute. It's been an honor, Captain. The honor was mine, Jake replied. Now get going before I drag you there myself. Amy was still at her console. Amy, Jake said softly. 10 more seconds. Her hands moved rapidly. I need to initialize the final sequence. If I don't do this right, the whole thing could fail. 5, 4, 3, she counted. Done. You'll have to trigger it manually from the captain's console. She stood, tears streaming down her face. You'd better survive this. Jake Morrison. Or I'll kill you myself. I'll do my best. He managed to smile. Go. Amy ran. Victor and Ben pulled her through the hatch. The bunker door sealed with a heavy clang. Jake was alone on the bridge. 45 seconds. He said to himself. Watching the countdown Victor had left on the tactical display, the Defiant was falling apart around him. A panel exploded to his left, showering him with sparks. He ignored it, focusing on the controls. The ship responded sluggishly now, barely maneuverable, but it responded. 30 seconds. The Krell fleet was so close now he could see individual details on their hulls. Weapons glowing. Engines burning. They were beautiful ships, sleek and deadly. Everything the Defiant wasn't. 20 seconds. He thought about his crew, safe in the bunker. Thought about the 7 million people in the colonies. Thought about all the times people had called this ship worthless. 10 seconds. On the screen, he could see Zixthar's command ship directly ahead. The ambassador would have a perfect view of the Defiant in its last moments. Jake hoped he was watching. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Jake triggered the cascade. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the Defiant's fuel tanks erupted with energy. Hydrogen at critical temperature met magnetic coils at maximum power. The resulting electromagnetic pulse exploded outward in a sphere of invisible death. Every electronic system in range died instantly. Krell warships went dark as their power systems fried. Their weapons stopped firing. Their engines cut out. Their lights went black. 30 ships became 30 pieces of floating debris in the span of a heartbeat. The pulse hit the Defiant last. Jake saw his console go dark. The lights died. The artificial gravity failed and he floated free from his chair. Emergency batteries kicked in, providing just enough power for life support and the bunker shields. Then the ship started to tumble. Without power, without stabilizers, it was just a chunk of metal spinning through space. Jake pulled himself toward the bunker hatch, fighting against the rotation. His shoulder hit a support beam hard enough to make him see stars. The bunker door wouldn't open. Of course it wouldn't. The power was dead. He found the manual release and pulled with all his strength. It moved slowly. So slowly. The ship's rotation was getting worse. He felt dizzy, disoriented. The hatch opened. Hands reached out and grabbed him, pulling him through. The door sealed behind him. He was on the floor of the bunker, gasping for breath. Amy was crying over him. Ben was checking him for injuries. Victor was laughing. Actually, laughing. "Is it done?" Jake managed to ask. Victor pointed to a small window in the bunker wall. Through it, they could see the Krell fleet drifting helplessly. Every ship was dark. The blockade was broken. "It's done," Victor confirmed. "The pulse worked perfectly. Every Krell ship in range is dead. And according to sensors, their weapon is disabled too. The colonies can restart their reactors." Jake closed his eyes. They had done it. The worthless ship had saved 7 million lives. "Captain," Lisa's voice came through on the emergency radio, transmitted from her escape pod. "The colonies are reporting power restoration. Life support is coming back online. You did it. You saved them." "We saved them," Jake corrected. "All of us. This old ship did the saving. We just pointed her in the right direction." The Defiant tumbled through space, powerless and broken. But inside its armored heart, 4 people were alive. And all around them, colonies were coming back to life. Children stopped crying. Temperatures started to rise. People breathed easier. The most worthless ship in the fleet had become the most valuable, and the galaxy would never forget it. Jake woke up in a medical bay, on Haven's Rest. His head hurt, and his shoulder was wrapped in bandages. The doctor, a tired-looking woman named Claire, told him he had a concussion and a dislocated shoulder. He had been unconscious for 2 days. "Your crew is fine," Claire added before he could ask. "They're all heroes. You should see the news feeds." She brought him a tablet. The screen showed footage of the Defiant's final approach, recorded from one of the colonies. You could see the old ship pushing through the Krell fire. Pieces breaking off, but never stopping. Then, the pulse, bright enough to light up the darkness, and all the Krell ships going dark at once. The headline read, "Ancient Vessel Saves Millions. Defeats Krell Fleet." Jake scrolled through more articles. There were interviews with colonists, with military analysts, with government officials. Everyone wanted to talk about the Defiant and its impossible victory. The ship that everyone said was worthless had become the most famous vessel in human space. "They're calling you the Ghost Captain," Claire said with a smile. "The man who flew a dead ship into the heart of enemy fire." "The ship wasn't dead," Jake corrected. "Just misunderstood." Ben was his first visitor. The pilot looked tired, but happy. He had a bottle of something that smelled like engine fuel. and probably tasted worse. "Thought we could have a drink," he said. To the Defiant. Two, 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 two. To the Defiant, Jake agreed, taking a sip and immediately regretting it. "What's the situation?" "The Krell are negotiating," Ben explained. "Turns out, when your entire fleet gets disabled by one old ship, it makes you reconsider your strategy. They're offering to return the colonies and discussing a peace treaty." "What about Zixthar?" Ben grinned. "Recalled to the Krell homeworld in disgrace. Apparently, losing to primitive technology is bad for your career." Over the next few days, the rest of the crew visited. Amy brought designs for a new weapon system based on the Defiant's fuel tanks. "The military is interested," she said excitedly. "They want to retrofit old ships with hydrogen drives and pulse generators. Create a fleet that's immune to electronic warfare." Lisa showed him messages from the colonies. Thousands of them. From people thanking the crew for saving their lives. Children had drawn pictures of the Defiant. One showed it with a cape and a superhero mask. "They love you," Lisa said softly. "You gave them hope when everyone else had given up." Kate visited last, carrying a long metal case. Inside was a plasma rifle, custom built and engraved with the Defiant's name. "I figured you'd need protection," she said. "Famous people attract trouble." "I'm not famous," Jake protested. "The ship is famous." "You're both famous," Kate replied. "Deal with it." Commander Victor Lane arrived with news that Jake had been officially pardoned for his unauthorized mission. More than pardoned, actually. Earth Command wanted to give him and his crew medals. There would be a ceremony. Politicians wanted to shake his hand. The whole thing made Jake uncomfortable. "Can I skip it?" he asked. "Absolutely not," Victor said firmly. "These people need heroes right now. You're going to smile, accept the medal, and let them feel good about humanity again. That's an order?" "That's an order." The ceremony was held on Earth, in front of thousands of people. Jake stood on a stage with his crew, feeling awkward in a formal uniform that didn't fit quite right. The Prime Minister gave a speech about courage and sacrifice. Someone presented them with medals that were too heavy and shiny. But the best part came after, when Dr. Marcus Stone took the stage. The old man looked proud as he addressed the crowd. 80 years ago, I designed the HMS Defiant," he said, his voice clear despite his age. "I believed in that ship. I believed in its systems. But I was told I was wrong. The design was too old-fashioned, too heavy, too slow. Nobody wanted it." He paused, looking at Jake and the crew. "These people proved that old doesn't mean worthless. Sometimes the things everyone throws away are exactly what you need when everything else fails. The Defiant was built to last, to endure, to protect. And when the moment came, that's exactly what it did." The crowd erupted in applause. Jake felt tears in his eyes. He looked at his crew and saw the same emotion on their faces. After the ceremony, Jake returned to Haven's Rest. The Defiant was in the repair bay, or what was left of it. The electromagnetic pulse had fried most of the systems. The hull was scarred and torn. It would take months to repair. If repair was even possible, Amy found him standing in front of it. "They want to put it in a museum," she said, "as a monument to the battle." "She's not done yet," Jake said quietly. "She's got more life in her, Jake. The damage is extensive. It might be cheaper to just build a new ship." "Then we'll build a new ship," Jake agreed. "But we'll use her parts. Her fuel tanks, her armor plating, her heart." Amy smiled. "You really loved this old rust bucket, didn't you?" "She saved 7 million lives," Jake said. "She deserves better than a museum." 6 months later, a new ship launched from Haven's Rest. It was built from the Defiant's core, using her fuel tanks and her over-engineered systems, but it was faster, sleeker, and equipped with modern technology alongside the old hydrogen drives. They named it the HMS Defiant II. And all across human space, other old ships were being pulled from scrapyards and retrofitted. Earth Command had created a new fleet, vessels that combined old and new technology. They were slower than pure modern ships, but they were tough, and they were immune to the electronic warfare that had almost destroyed humanity. The Krell watched this development with what might have been respect. In their next communication with Earth, they included a message specifically for Jake Morrison. "You have demonstrated that age is not weakness," it read. "The Krell Empire acknowledges the strength of human persistence. We will remember the ship they called useless." Jake kept that message on his desk. Next to it, he placed the old nameplate from the original Defiant, salvaged from the wreckage. The metal was scorched and dented, but the letters were still clear. HMS Defiant. Ben was with him on the bridge of the new ship, preparing for their first mission. It was a simple cargo run. Nothing dramatic. But it felt right to be flying again. "You know what's funny?" Ben said, as they powered up the engines. "This ship has all the latest technology. Shields, weapons, sensors. We're actually a proper warship now." "We were always proper," Jake replied. "We just needed people to see it." The engines hummed to life, that familiar deep rumble of hydrogen combustion mixing with the sharper sound of modern fusion drives. The Defiant II pulled away from the station smoothly, heading into the darkness. Behind them, other ships from the new fleet followed. The HMS Endurance, the HMS Resilience, the HMS Tenacity. All of them built from salvaged parts and old technology, combined with new innovations. All of them proof that what others discarded could become invaluable. Lisa's voice came through the comm. "Captain, we're getting a transmission from New Terra. The governor wants to say hello." "Put her through." A woman's face appeared on screen, smiling. "Captain Morrison, just wanted to thank you again. My daughter draws pictures of the Defiant every day. You're her hero. Tell her the ship is the hero," Jake said. "We just flew it. She knows," the governor replied. "But she also knows it takes courage to fly something everyone says is worthless. That's the lesson she took from all this. Don't let other people tell you what has value." After the transmission ended, Jake sat back in his chair. Through the viewport, he could see stars stretching endlessly in every direction. Each one was a possibility, a destination, an adventure, waiting. "Where to, Captain?" Ben asked. Jake thought about the journey that had brought them here. From a despised piece of junk in a salvage yard to the ship that saved millions. From being mocked by aliens to earning their respect. From worthless to priceless. "Anywhere we want," Jake said. "After all, we've got the best ship in the fleet." Ben laughed. "We've got the toughest ship in the fleet. There's a difference." "Same thing," Amy said from engineering. "When everyone else's fancy ships break down, we'll still be flying." And they would be. The Defiant II and her sister ships were built to last, just like the original. They were slow and heavy and old-fashioned in all the ways that mattered. But they worked. They endured. They survived. Just like humanity itself, the ship accelerated into the darkness, carrying its crew toward whatever came next. Behind them, the fuel tanks hummed with power, ready to protect, ready to fight. Ready to prove once again that age and wisdom beat youth and speed every single time. In the cargo bay, there was a plaque mounted on the wall. It bore a quote from Dr. Stone, words he had said during the medal ceremony. "The things they throw away are often exactly what you need when everything else fails." Below it, someone had added in smaller letters, "The fuel tank demonstrated otherwise." Jake smiled every time he saw it. Because in the end, that's exactly what had happened. They said the ship was useless. The fuel tank demonstrated otherwise. And the galaxy would never forget the lesson the Defiant had taught them. Never underestimate an old ship with a clever crew and a purpose worth fighting for. The Defiant Two flew on into the stars, ready for whatever challenges waited. Because that's what humans did. They took what others discarded, found the value in it, and used it to save the day. And they would keep doing it, again and again, no matter what the galaxy threw at them. That was the human way. And it always would be.